Is Amazon going to cause a problem with New World when it comes to fresh servers? Well, the answer to that might be maybe. Basically, I think there's two potential pitfalls that New World could fall into, and I think one is way more likely than the other, but we'll talk about it in a moment. Before we jump in, if you want to support the channel, then do consider becoming a YouTube member. It does truly help. So yeah, we got some information regarding Fresh. We know the servers, we know the launch times. Fun, joy, great stuff. We know that they're also going to be putting quite a bit of effort into marketing when it comes to this Return to Eternum event, with a lot of Twitch streamers all getting involved. You see it all over Twitter and that kind of stuff. That's going to be huge. Fresh is going to be pretty cool. And I would like to say that I think Fresh overall is actually a net positive for the game. And I do think it's a good idea. But there's two issues that they could run into. One of which I don't think is that important, so let's talk about it. Some people will say that New World hasn't changed very much and they've only reworked the level 1 to 25 experience, so it's too soon to be doing Fresh. Now, whilst it's true, it would have been amazing if they managed to, rework all of the leveling, I don't think this is that important. Sure, if you don't like New World's combat, then you're going to be like stuck because they're not going to change the combat just for you. The game doesn't have to be for everybody, to quote Ashes of Creation fans. They obviously will do tweaks, and they definitely should, but they're not going to change the combat, and the end game isn't drastically different. Yes, we have PvP arenas, yes, we have the expedition mutators, all fun, all good stuff, but the game is just sort of the same but better. Like, now the systems all seem to sort of function nicely and work nicely with each other, whereas when the game first launched we had the expertise system, but it was called the high watermark gear score system, and nobody really knew how it worked and you couldn't track it and all kinds of stuff, and just so on and so forth, right? We had bugs, we had exploits, we had laggy wars, we had desync, we just had like literally a litany of problems. And my point here is that the game has changed, but it's sort of just been tightening things up. It's not been a revolutionary change, it's just been sort of making the things that we have a little bit better. Outpost Rush, for example, didn't work for weeks and weeks at launch. Now it's perfectly fine, and we're actually going to be getting cross-realm relatively soon. I don't think that the Return to Eternum stuff is necessarily going to be a thing to get new players completely. It's not for players who never tried New World, it's for players who tried it and are coming back. I mean, the clue's in the name, Return to Eternum. They're trying to get players who left because of those problems to come and give it a second chance. They're not trying to say, hey, look at these new features that you might want to play. It's more, we've fixed stuff, we've made it better, come and try it again. So the fact that they've not revamped 1 to 60 and the end game doesn't have PvE raids and stuff like that, I don't think that's necessarily a big problem. As I said, it would have been nice if we had the full rework. Yes, of course, but I don't really think it's a big issue. Now, the next one I didn't think was a big issue, but then for a moment I think it might actually be a problem. And that is, I was a little bit worried that what's going to happen to the live servers, which are going to be called legacy servers, is that the player numbers are going to dip significantly. It's an obvious fact at this point that there's going to be some percentage of players who currently play who also try to play on Fresh. Now, whether or not they'll keep their mains and just try out Fresh and then come back, or whether or not they'll actually just leave and just join Fresh and never come back, obviously I have no idea what percentage of players will do that. But that stands to reason then that the players on the legacy servers are going to go down. It also stands to reason that the players who start on Fresh, not everybody will stick on Fresh, so those player numbers will go down. And that's sort of perfectly fine and okay, but what happens if one of either of these two player bases becomes so small that they can't sustain a server in a region? Now, I don't think that's going to be particularly too problematic for US and Europe, but in other regions where there's not as many servers, this could quickly become a problem. And then what did Amazon go ahead and say? Well, they said this line here: if the Fresh Start world population drops, does that mean it will be merged on a legacy server, or will it be merged with another Fresh server? And then this is the bit I have a bit of a problem with. We will never merge any Fresh Start worlds into Legacy world. Never. Never to me is a very long time. So just to clarify there, I think it's quite obvious that they'll probably just merge the Fresh servers with themselves and legacy servers with themselves. That will be the priority. But what they're saying here is the Fresh servers will never be merged into the legacy server. And I thought that that could cause a bit of a problem because it doesn't really address the issue. If either of those two categories of situations and servers like declines to a point where you can't actually hold the server population, then you're going to have a problem. Now, it seems to be that they're trying to put the problem there on the Fresh players. It sounds like like you will be able to transfer off Fresh and go to a legacy server, but not vice versa, because obviously that's the whole point of the Fresh servers. But they are literally there committing to having two types of servers indefinitely. Well, forever. There will always be Fresh indicated servers and there will always be legacy servers. And I feel like just a year after the game launching, that's an awfully big commitment. In 5 years' time, does it make sense to have servers that are literally 1 year apart? Well, what happens if you rework levels 25 to 60? Are you going to want fresh? I just don't agree with the wording of that statement. What they could have said is that we have no plans to do this and we will merge Fresh with Fresh, and only if we have to will we merge the servers together. And what I thought was interesting is because these Fresh Start servers are going to be marked, it sort of sounds like the legacy servers are the ones that may actually struggle in population. Well, if you think about it, any future player now is probably going to want to start on a Fresh Start server because they're closer to being on top, if that makes sense. They're not as far behind. So in actual fact, I can see the legacy server population slowly dwindling because it's not going to get any new players. And I was like, well, that's a problem. But then it sort of dawned on me what they'd actually written. It seems like they're actually trying to make it so that the Fresh environment will take the brunt of any problems when it comes to player decline, which, okay, I'm not really have a problem with that. I'm just not sure how they can properly maintain it. But then I reread what they'd actually written. We will never merge Fresh Start worlds into legacy server worlds. But if there was some sort of like catastrophic thing on the legacy servers and there just wasn't enough players to hold a server, what they could do is merge the legacy server into Fresh. Now, obviously, the people who are on those Fresh servers would be very, very angry. And the reality is this is unlikely to happen. At least on the regions that I play, EU, NA, this is unlikely to happen, right? Legacy is not going to die off. There's like 70,000 people playing at a weekend. It's not going to go below 2,000 people per region. That's just unlikely. Even if these Fresh indicated servers are just always marked as Fresh, like I do find that a little bit weird, because I do think that that could cause a decline in the legacy servers, but I don't think it's going to be that big, especially when you consider that the Fresh Start people, if their server numbers ever drop, they can just jump over to the legacy servers, presumably at some point. I mean, at the minute, when it launches, you literally can't even go from Fresh to Fresh, but presumably at some point you'll be able to go from Fresh to Fresh or from Fresh to Legacy, but not from Legacy to Fresh. And they actually do say that they'll allow it at some point later in the time. So really, I think what they're trying to do is say that if there are any server like population issues, they want you to go to Legacy. It doesn't seem like they're anticipating Legacy dying off. However, if you did not have some of those extra things, then I do think not having new players start on these legacy servers will ultimately probably lead to their demise. However, having said all of that, I think the game's population is going to be completely fine and it can maintain the two separate environments. I just don't know why Amazon at this point would commit to having two separate environments indefinitely. They could just have said, it's not something that we will plan, and if we can, we will merge you with the same. So Legacy will get merged with Legacy and Fresh will get merged with Fresh. Only if there is some sort of problem or enough time passes that the effect is minimized will we end up merging the two. I just found it a little bit weird that they're committing to have both of these sort of environments, and it's a bit weird that they've said never. I always feel like saying never is a big commitment. They could have just reworded it a little bit to be like, no plans at this time, which they literally did in a previous question, so they literally know how to do that. So my initial thoughts were this is possibly going to result in something bad, but now I've sort of simmered. I don't think they will leave players in the lurch. Like, if the numbers are literally like so low that they can't maintain a server population, they'll do something. They'll not just let the game die off. That obviously doesn't make sense. So it did cause a little bit of initial concern for me, but I don't think it'll actually be that bad. And as I said at the start, Fresh will do way more like good than bad. It feels like now we're sort of in this sort of moment before the hype, but once we start seeing everybody on Twitch, then it should really like pop off again. People are saying 100,000 plus. I have no idea when it comes to play numbers, but I'm very excited to find out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree that any of these are issues or not issues? I don't think they're that big of an issue personally, but I'd be very curious to know your thoughts, so let me know in the comments. If you want to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member in the link below really does help, so thank you very much to you guys and anybody considering that. What you should definitely do is have a most beautiful, beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.